I know inherently we have our kind of paradigms, which are just a whole host of small habits, aren't they? So it's a whole load of habits, but what we try to do is we try to change an entire paradigm, and that's just too much. So it might be that we need to do a tiny thing to move towards that. So the easy example is people going to the gym. So one of the things that I hear, that if you decided, right, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to the gym in the morning. So if you go to bed in your gym gear, it's going to be even embarrassing for yourself to remove the gym gear having not gone to the gym. So I think it's like there are games that you can play with yourself, there are things that you can do, but also, as you said, you can link to things, you can have accountability partners, there's obviously KPIs, so your key performance indicators. So I know I've put in we're second half of the year now, aren't we? So the next kind of 90 days that I work from. So I've got my new goals, which is still going towards my yearly goals, but it's the next stretch. And I've got a whole host of new things that I'm now measuring. And for instance, one of them is the number of letters that I send out per week. And that's a really interesting one. So again, but I'm making it so it's not just me. I've told lots of people, I have an accountability group, it's written down each week. My VA is waiting for me to tell her which places to send the letters to enable us to keep doing it. So again, am I going to get results immediately? I would imagine that's highly unlikely. But is it going to be a longer term thing? And also on top of that, it is part of a small habit that I'm now installing that either can be added to or can be grown or all of those other things. So I really like that. It's kind of like having these different ways. And for some people, certain things work, and for other people, they don't work. And this is where I love this kind of consistent persistence and the persistent consistence, because it may be, if we talk about what, Wendy was saying, that, you're really desperate, there are certain things that are just so boring, admin tasks, repetitive tasks, and they're really boring. And so it's kind of like, well, what could I do to overcome that? Now, it may be that along the way, there's this just constant, it's so painful, like this procrastination keeps coming on and on and on. So you try something and it still feels really painful. It's a really uphill struggle. And then somebody else says, oh, well, actually, had you considered trying this? So you try that. So you're still being persistent. You're consistently doing something. It's like, okay, well, actually, this is a little bit easier now. Doing it in this way is a little bit easier. And then it may get to the stage where, as we talked about, you may then get a VA to do it. And then all you're doing is measuring what they've done. And so it's this sort of, it can be a journey as well. But as long as we don't have that scenario where we start something like going to the gym and then, week 2 of January, we've stopped. So it's, but I think it's like all of these different ways. Sometimes there'll be certain things that we'll have to use each and every one of them, and hearing how other people can do things and have been able to overcome things, have been able to deal with procrastination, I think is really interesting.
I think it's starting with small things as well, isn't it? So I log onto my computer at 7 o'clock every morning to start work. The first thing I do before I log on is decide what I'm grateful for. What happened the day before that I'm really grateful for. So that kind of daily practicing of gratitude has become, a consistent habit for me in that respect. And I think in terms of what we do as kind of in the property world, is one of the big things is building our network. And I think consistently for me, a habit is making contact with 5 people a day. So not necessarily, seeking out new people, but making sure that over the course of the day, I've reached out to 5 people to either start a conversation or continue a conversation, or just check in and see how they're doing, and that kind of maintaining those relationships. So by doing that consistently over the day, over the week and over the month, I'm kind of building up that network and growing that network, reaching out to people. And I find that's been quite important in terms of kind of learning from others and getting into the right networks with the right people that can help me with my journey, and I can help them with theirs.
Wow, that's quite a massive commitment there. So how did that come about, if I might ask? Was there a goal? I mean, obviously you've sort of spoken about networking, but I mean, that sort of slightly terrifies me, that many communications. I mean, obviously,
well, how does that look? Do it naturally anyway, probably. It might be a couple of texts, and it's not, sometimes I'll do them all in the morning, but I kind of think at the end of the day, right, have I contacted 5 people? If I haven't, then I'll go onto LinkedIn and see, who have I not spoken with recently, and just reach out and say, how you doing? Or I might have worked on something during the day, and it would be a case of then, going and updating somebody on what I've been working on. And I think I did a 5-day challenge a few years back with Paula Wingate from Influential Minds. And this is one of her big things, this 5 a day. And that's, building your network by being consistent with 5 a day is kind of how to grow it. And that's just, I'm not saying that I necessarily was consistent with that in the beginning, but what I had learned was that if I missed weeks of not doing it, then there were less interactions the following week, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it has, and it's, it's across all the channels as well. It's not, it's.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. I mean, I think, certainly networking for me, there's a local one. It's actually not that local at all to me, but it is a Kent networking group. It's a much smaller one. And, I was really definite that I wanted to go every month. Now, it just so happened that I was actually away for the last 2 months, and it was on this last Wednesday. And again, it was kind of a bit like, it's a really long journey home. It's, it has a massive impact on the rest of my day, because I like to be in bed by 10 to be able to get up at 5. And I can't possibly get home in that time scale. So it is always a bit more tiring to do that. But, I really wanted to go, and I knew I'd made that commitment, and I turned up, and it was just, again, it was great. And the speaker, I was meant to be there, and there was so much knowledge coming from this person. So yeah, it is interesting how, it seems kind of serendipitous, doesn't it? But I think it's not serendipitous. It's like people talk about luck. It's not luck. You are where you are because of these things that you've sort of taken on board, so to speak. So